Hey, happy Monday night. Hope you guys are doing well. Hop in the chat here and run it down with you guys. Crazy day. What a day for crypto, man. Wow. To have BTC run like it did today, a lot of tether was printed. So we'll see what happens with all that. People are going to say it. I said 75 was the top. I was obviously wrong about that. I did not anticipate BTC going to anywhere close to $90,000 a piece. Could it still get, there's a lot of people that are saying 100,000 is inevitable. I still think that there's some headwinds. I think that there's some things that could happen here in the short term with Tether that would cause a huge liquidation of Bitcoin and a big move to the downside. You need a pullback after what happened today. Could it continue to run? Absolutely. I'm not betting on that. And a lot of people took profits. If you were a Bitcoin whale, I'm sure you were selling into the volume that was coming from the ETFs today. So largest day worth of inflows, like $6.9 billion worth of inflows into Bitcoin today through the ETFs. You had MicroStrategy acquire another $2 billion worth. So people are running it up. People are padding it. And like I said, I can guarantee you there's people that are pocketing profits. I'd be interested to see what the chart shows. There's like an inflow and outflow. There is the lowest amount on exchanges. The supply on exchanges is significantly lower than it's ever been. And just an interesting dynamic playing out of the market. We did get breadth open up in the broader stock market. You got a rotation from large cap down into the Russell and the broader stock market. Mixed bag today. A lot of the larger cap stocks were down, whereas small caps are up. Small caps kind of hold the key for what we've been looking for an expansion. You got that in crypto today. And so I think you're going to see something similar in the crypto markets. I think that there could be a black swan event. Last time we saw a move similar to this in Bitcoin was back in 2017 at the top, where they introduced the CME and they were able to put futures on Bitcoin, and then it fell off a cliff from there. And that marked the top of that bull market. And you did get a rotation from Bitcoin into alts. XRP went right after that, right? You saw Bitcoin topped on like December 18th. And I think XRP ended up topping January 4th after Bitcoin. So another 2 weeks worth of run for XRP in a rotation, the other altcoins, and then it was lights out, done. I think you could get something similar here. You got Ethereum back at like $3,300. Doge is up big. There was a lot of things that moved today in a really big way. It's one of those fun days in crypto. You go through bear markets and like your portfolio's down and it sucks, and it's an extended period of time. You're continuing to dollar cost average, and you're like, that this is coming. But when you get a day like today, it makes you smile. Your portfolio is green. It's nice to see the upside. People in Cardano, it's like 5-7 days ago, something like that. You were at like 30 cents, and now you're at like 65 cents to 61 cents, almost 100% return. Same thing on Doge, big moves on Doge. So anyway, it'd be interesting to see if these dynamics continue in the market. Again, I'm hesitant to believe that. If all eyes are on Bitcoin right now, if they did want to use it as a scapegoat for a collapse in markets, a great time to do it. Not saying that's going to happen. Again, I don't have a crystal ball. Nobody does. Like I said, I missed the top. I thought 75 was the top, and we're way past that. So we'll see where it ends up actually topping. You've had a little pullback in the last couple of hours here, but it ran all day long up to the upside. Just kept going like the Energizer Bunny. Every time I thought, okay, it's done. No. She just kept moving, kept trucking. You got Asian markets open right now. Japan. You got the yen over there in Japan starting to continue. Well, it's not starting to. It's continued to depreciate against the U.S. dollar. We're back to 154 yen per U.S. dollar. Looking for 155 over there before the BOJ or the Bank of Japan should step in and really just, having to raise interest rates, which is going to put significant strain on the reverse carry trade and global economics, if people start dumping treasuries. So anyway, lots of things going on. Appreciate you guys joining me here in the chat, running it up with me over here on TikTok. Add your questions here. I'll try to get to them as we go through, just like I do over here on YouTube and on X. And we'll go ahead and run it down tonight. We'll probably hang out about an hour, 50 minutes or so, and then we'll cut it out. But, so Atlantic Living. I mean, they point out, like I said, I thought that, Bitcoin would stop at 75K. Nobody has a crystal ball. I didn't think they were going to need more liquidity in Bitcoin than that. They would need to roll into other stuff. Apparently they do. Apparently there's a larger liquidity crisis than I thought was true. You've got, what is it? The cash swap for the euro is negative for the first time since 1999 in the Forex market. Not good. That means it's super illiquid. Like, people are scrambling to find money over there and not being able to do that. So people are hurting. I don't think, we'll see. I think that there could be problems with banks in the UK and Europe this week. Some big problems over there with liquidity crisis. We'll see if we get a digital euro or a digital pound in the next, before the month's out. I think that's a high possibility and probability. Same thing with Japan. If they were to launch their CBDC and the digital yen, I think that's highly likely, this month as well. They're the only one of the G7 nations that's in pilot right now. But yeah, just to go back to the question here, I didn't see there needing to be more liquidity to be rotated into other things. But obviously I was wrong, and there's a larger liquidity crisis than I anticipated. And so they've pushed Bitcoin up. They've continued to print Tether. And I think you'll see that rotate into XRP using the ETFs when there's a liquidity crisis. That's my thesis. We got some people over here that are excited about Bitcoin. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that it continues higher. I hope that people make a ton of money on it. I have clients that own a lot of Bitcoin and did really well today. Some of my clients made millions of dollars today on their Bitcoin. Excited for them, glad to see it happen. And again, excited for the whole space. It looks like everything's on the up. And I think, again, we'll probably see a rotation from Bitcoin into other things here over the next few weeks. If that was the top. If it's not the top, it could go higher. Like I said, a lot of people anticipate 100,000 as a foregone conclusion. I tend to be the contrarian on things. When everybody else thinks it's a for sure thing, that's when I get sketchy about it. So we'll see. Daniel Smith says, hey, Jake, first off, been a part of the Mastermind for a month now and highly recommend it to everyone. Thank you, brother. Glad to have you in there, and I appreciate the kind words. He says, great value. My question is, besides XRP and XLM, what would be your top 3 Finternet token picks? Not financial advice. I really like Hedera Hashgraph. I think that is going to do really well. I think it probably ends up being the base for Web3, dApps. Proppy's had a big day here recently also. You're able to do 1031 exchange on real estate, tokenized real estate on their network. I think that has a lot of applications. And then XDC would probably be the other one that I think, besides XRP and XLM, has a lot of promise and use case for trade finance. So those would be maybe my 3 beyond XRP and XLM. XDC, Propi, and HBAR. Like you said, not financial advice, just stuff that I'm watching. Tom says that Ethereum is the foundation for Web3 today. Right now, yeah, I would agree with that. You know, there's been a lot built out on Ethereum because it did have clarity from Bill Hinman back in 2018. You've seen a lot of dApps and other applications built out over there for DeFi. Python and Solidity developers have become significantly more prevalent than some of the other coding languages for smart contracts. And you've seen other people adapt their blockchain to be EVM compatible to be able to kind of pull some of that talent over and build in their ecosystem, right? You know, everybody kind of knows at this point that Ethereum and Bitcoin are both not scalable, high prices and low latency or high latency, take a while to settle. That's why you have layer twos like Matic or Polygon, whatever you want to call it, over there on Ethereum. You know, so the XRPL has a side chain that's an EVM side chain and compatible with Onyx through Axelar. Onyx is JP Morgan's EVM compatible ecosystem. I don't think the EVM is going anywhere. I don't know what happens to Ethereum long term. I do think that Ethereum is a security as a proof of stake token. I've said that before. Anything where you're pooling capital and you have to give up the asset as consideration for returns or profits based on somebody else's merit or running a staking pool, I think will end up being a securities offering. We're working on ways to be able to wrap that inside of a Reg D offering and make it compliant and legal. But for the time being, it's still ambiguous. You know, there is no regulation in the space, so it doesn't hurt anything. Emily says, "Hey Jake, how are you, ma'am? In your opinion, what blockchain is the XRPL's biggest competition with regard to Swift backend stock derivatives? Thank you for all you do." There's no such thing. There is no second best. That's what Saylor says. For that application in particular, there are no other options. Both Ripple and R3. I guess you could say XDC, but XDC is more contract driven. It's not really it's for the tokenization of contracts and the value that those have versus being agnostic and allowing for interoperability. The native DEX to the XRPL allows for transfer value between anything, any issued assets on the network. And so I don't think that there is anything that's anywhere close to competition for Swift or stock market or derivatives. You could argue Hyperledger, I guess, if you wanted to, since it's it's not really, it's kind of like a fork of the XRPL. It's the same code. They just didn't black hole the original account and it burnt half the supply. And the decimal places are a bit different for XLM versus XRP or Hyperledger versus the XRPL. So you could say that. You could say that is competition. I think that there's application for international remittance on Hyperledger, but I think that'll be primarily used by retail and consumer-facing applications or merchants versus back-end settlement for stock market or derivatives or high-value payments like on the XRPL. We've got... I just asked that one. Rob says, an observation followed by my question, if I may, please. Absolutely, sir. I've noticed as I've been onboarding my XRP in Anchorage, awesome, that a destination tag is not needed. And now for my question, is this how I know that my XRP is not commingled and it's segregated to only me? Yes, that is exactly how, Rob. Destination tags are only required for commingled funds. True. You're correct. Right. Yeah. So that same wallet address is used for all of the assets that are held, and they give you a destination tag, which is like, an accounting mechanism to allow them to know a receipt of how much they owe you. Whereas all of our accounts are segmented and never commingled there at Anchorage. And It's siloed, and there is no rehypothecation or commingled funds, which is how you get a specific wallet address specific for your assets there with Digital Wealth Partners at Anchorage. Let's see if I missed any questions over here on the TikTok before I hop on. Very cool to see a few people over here. Appreciate you guys hanging out with me here on TikTok. You got Xavier says, appreciate all you do. Can you share knowledge or experience that you have on arbitrage? It's not anything that I've ever really done well. It's not something that I've looked at. I have friends and people in the space that have built bots that arbitrage. Sam Bankman-Fried, SBF, a lot of people may know who he is just because of FTX and everything, but that's how he made his money and a name to begin with, was he would arbitrage Bitcoin. So he would buy it on one exchange, send it to another one and sell it at a higher price. And he was able to snipe prices and do that at scale. And that's how he made a bunch of money to start FTX. So until we have a pricing mechanism that is consistent across all the exchanges and the market's more mature, you're still going to have some arbitrage. There are going to be, especially for XRP and XLM, because it can settle almost instantly between different exchanges. You could trade that and arbitrage it a lot if you were able to find discrepancies in price between two exchanges. People that are market makers and they can arbitrage a pool. There's going to be a lot of applications for arbitrage in the future, but I think those applications will become less and less over time. And the people that are making the market or providing liquidity will be incentivized more than the people that are arbitraging those markets in the future. That's the whole point of the AMMs on the XRPL. Loyan says, hey, JC, I know you and many others predict a sudden 2 to 3 digit XRP when institutions get involved, but that will be a lot of public attention. XRP is meant for B2B. Any insight on how this will play out? Thanks. I'm confident that it will be just a big move. It won't be like a run up like a lot of people anticipate. Like you won't see something like Bitcoin today. The chart will gap to where it needs to be. And there may be a liquidity crisis on exchanges that allows, OTC buyers to buy XRP, but nobody on the retail facing side. I think that's a possibility also. As soon as we see a BlackRock ETF, it's game on. That's what, I'm really waiting for XRP, alongside Japan, Tether, and the ETF like that. Those are the three main signs for me that we've made it. Jesse Escobar, he says, can you share some of your upcoming investing options you'll have? When will these options be available, and what will those differences be versus the current available options? Appreciate you, Jesse. So, man, I could take that a lot of different ways. We have a lot of deal flow, real estate, private equity, M&A transactions, different bespoke deals in small market segments. We look for things where people are able to use depreciation to offset the taxable income. If you are going to have cash on cash, looking for IRRs north of 14 to 18%. If you can find that, plus some cash on cash and cash flow, and a way to depreciate that cash flow using tax advantage investments. That's what we're looking for. On the private investment side. When it comes to digital assets, we're waiting for the XRPL to kind of mature a little bit more. The majority of our clients do hold significant allocations to that asset in particular. Looking to get involved with Flare. That's another one that we see a lot of our clients hold large amounts of. Talk to Hugo. Right now, what's available is the ability to borrow against your assets and also put them to work in covered calls and puts. In strategies that we run there, or the Digital Wealth Partners runs there. And in the future, as liquidity pools and AMMs become a bit more mature on the XRPL and you have direct interoperability, the other main thing that we're waiting for in particular is XLS 64D. It's an amendment on the XRPL that allows for pseudo accounts. Basically, you can leave the XRP in the account that you have and then delegate that ownership or liquidity into other ecosystems without the asset itself having to be moved. I think that that's going to be huge for the custody rule, and likely at that point the SEC can kind of move that in. It was proposed back at the beginning of 22, February of 22. The SEC proposed custody rule for assets. Right now, just with assets the way that they are, without them being tokenized, it's very difficult to hold them in qualified custody and earn yield unless you are using covered calls and puts. Most of the time, you're going to have to pass those assets out to somebody else that's using them in some capacity and then paying you a percentage of that. So that's what we're looking at in the future. We want to be able to provide a lot of opportunities outside of digital assets to be able to diversify clients' portfolios and have asymmetric bets that are, higher end on the spectrum for returns for people as well. Let's see if I missed anything over here on. Rick says, when is XRP going to the moon? Like I said, we're dependent on actual utility of the asset. And so waiting for institutional adoption, waiting for ETFs, waiting for Japan to use it, and for the reverse carry trade to unwind, and for Tether to collapse. So all those things could happen same day. They could be drawn out a little bit. Corey's asked, why are social media the only people in XRP? Every other coin is higher. Well, Corey, I don't think it's just social media people. It makes a lot of sense to me personally. I spent about a year and a half trying to figure out how it was wrong and couldn't prove myself wrong on why it would be adopted at scale for back-end settlement for institutions and enterprise value payments. And there's just been continued confluence beyond that time frame when I made that decision and came to that conclusion. There's continued to be more developments and adoption. So it attracts brand new people, but other coin is up and doesn't have any settlement value. The whole market's speculative right now. There's really no utility on anything. XRP is the closest thing you have. It's used in small applications for remittance to third-party countries or third world countries, for banks and specific institutions that don't want to hold the counterparty's currency. And so the whole market's still speculation. And until we have full regulation here in the US around what the tokens are themselves and how this networks can be used by enterprises, I think you're going to continue to just see what has been. But as soon as that changes, the whole market dynamic changes. This one we already ran down. Let's see here. Martin says, how have you been? Great, brother. Appreciate you being here. I've seen lately that many Bitcoin wallets have been dormant for 13 years becoming active. Will this be the last bull run? Again, I don't have a crystal ball. I think Bitcoin's headed for some trouble. I do think Tether's going to have some pretty significant implications for the network that aren't going to be good. And I think you're seeing, some whales that knew or know something selling into the volume that's come in over the last 24 hours here. So when you see Satoshi's wallet up, I think that's when the game's over, or the jig's up. Vadim says, when will Gary get fired, resign, and when will the appeal be withdrawn? I think XRP's price will appreciate, and then that'll happen. Trump said the first day that he's, after he's inaugurated, he's going to take Gary out, and I believe him on that. So we're looking for early, mid-January, January 20th, I think is inauguration day. So I'd look at January 21st. For Gary being fired. Gabe says he spoke with Connor at Digital Wealth Partners today. Thanks for looking forward to working with them. Appreciate you sending me the direction last week. Absolutely, brother. Thank you for having a chat with them. Excited to be able to work with you. We've built all that because it didn't exist. And I wanted people to have access to the ability to borrow against their XRP and earn yield on it. before some of the DeFi and other things were built out on the network, and we've been able to accomplish that, which I'm super excited about. And we'll continue to build out products and services in alignment with that as things go. So excited to have you over there and excited to work with you. And again says, why does everyone think Bitcoin is a store of value? What feature designates it from XRP that makes it better for this situation? Narrative. It's slower moving and more expensive to move. And so if you wanted to store something somewhere, it's better suited for sitting there and not moving around. There's less supply, right? So supply and demand dynamics allow Bitcoin to be a significantly higher value for the amount of money that's been invested in it versus XRP. If XRP had a similar market cap to Bitcoin, it would be at like $8, you know? So when XRP does go to 2, 3, 4 digits, people are going to have a really hard time reconciling the market cap number that they see. They're going to have to change the paradigm in which they value things from traditional stocks over to something that's providing liquidity for transactions, which is completely separate and going to be, like I said, difficult for people to wrap their mind around. But yeah, I would say less supply. It's more expensive to move. It takes longer to move. It's better suited for just sitting there. Similar to gold. Like there's not a whole lot you can do with gold, but it's a great store of value. I think Bitcoin has a lot of corollaries to gold, and I think that was the point. Let's see here. Make sure I didn't miss anything over here on TikTok. Corey says, why use a risk asset that tries to act like a payment coin? XRP today is the worst coin to buy. You said in your opinion, which I appreciate. It depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for ROI, I think you're going to be mistaken on what the best coin to buy is. Raptor709 says, Jake, I carry XRP on the balance sheet of my tech company as an investment. Awesome. If I plan to use XRP in the future within my business, can it become a working asset? Yes. And this is something that we've done with one of the other clients. I have a family office that has a payment business. And they literally bought a bunch of XRP and XLM and wrote it off as software. They do intend to use it to be able to settle transactions and be able to scale into a new financial system and continue to provide the services that they do today for the payments and the processing that they do. So yeah, you could if you did have an actual application for the XRP, it could become a working asset inside your business. You would likely have to run a node on the network. That was one of the main things that we had to do with them. So that's a couple $100,000 to stand up a node at this point to be able to validate transactions and verify things and prove that, yeah, you are using it for business activities. And then, you're probably going to want to be able to issue assets and do other things on the network, depending on what the application is. You just said tech companies. So I don't know what type of tech company you have, if it's infrastructure, if it's services, if it's IT services, if it's development services. There's a lot of different things you could be for a tech company. So hopefully what I said is valuable for you. I don't know if you can use the asset in that manner, but if you could, again, you'd likely want to be able to spin up a validator or a node to verify transactions on the network and prove that you are going to use it in that capacity. Dr. Monray says, why is XRP not pumping as the others? Look, the whole point of XRP is that it's a stable value and be able to settle transactions. If you have significant, huge swings in volatility on the asset, that's not really good for settling volume or transactions, because when you send it, even if it's a big move in 3 to 4 seconds and it takes to settle on the other side, the value that lands on the other side is going to be significantly different than what you sent. So you have XRP trend sideways and very low volatility for an extended period of time, and then it moves erratically to the upside to push more liquidity into the asset to be able to facilitate a new level of transactions, and then it will be sideways again for a long time. I think that that's the way a bridge currency should work. Mighty Tone asks if I think there's a speculative pump for XRP. I think the next pump for XRP will be very much utility driven and not speculation. Brian says, big shout out to Jake, Future Max, and all the Mastermind members. Appreciate you, brother. Digital Ascension Group and Digital Wealth Partners. I feel so calm and ready just sitting with a popcorn. Yeah, well, I mean, appreciate you pointing out the Mastermind. Super excited about the community and the culture that we have there in the group. And everybody there I know was prepared. I know that they have at least seen everything and heard everything that they need to prior to price appreciation. And when prices do move, it's still going to be exciting for people. Emotions are going to be high, just like they are when things drop off the cliff. People get scared. It's nice to have a community of people that you can go chat with and talk to that are going through the same things as you and listen to sound, reasonable voices and help you kind of check yourself when you are in an emotional state for whatever reason, right? Up or down. So anyway, and we do run private deals there in the group. Reg D funds, SPVs, if you know what those are. So if you want to get access to companies like Ripple or Uphold or Circle or some of the other things we've looked at, would love to talk about those things. I can't hear publicly because we do run 506B, which we allow for sophisticated investors to participate on those cap tables. So if you're not accredited, you still qualify and can participate. Because of the resources and the financial education that we provide in the group, you understand the risks associated with all the investments that we, raise for within the community, and therefore, and because consideration is passed between us and the other party, we have a pre-existing business relationship, so we fill all of the needs required for a 506B to be able to be compliant. Anyway. So again, thank you for the kind words, Brian. Excited to have you in the group, and looking forward to the price appreciation here in the short term. Wild Bill, what's going on? He says, what connections have you heard R3 having besides with Swift, central banks, Project Ion, and the DTCC? Worked with R3 to build out back-end settlement for the stock market. I think that's huge. The digital pound. You've got banks in the Middle East, Japan, banks in Japan. A lot of them. They're R3 is a sleeper. A lot of people don't realize all the connections and the inroads that they have and how the network's built out. And it makes sense. It's a private permissioned ecosystem. Corda is a great blockchain for that, and it just utilizes XRP or XDC to be able to settle those transactions between siloed ecosystems in that software. Mark says, "What's up? Did you see Trump has watched XRP Unleashed trailer?" I did not, but that's pretty cool. I'll be headed down to Houston this week for the premiere down there, so excited to watch that. Everett over here on TikTok says, Jake, do you think they could be using bots to keep XRP relatively in a certain price range right now? Yes, I do. I think that there's programmatic sales and purchases of XRP to be able to hold price stability. I think the escrow is important for that. People complain that they release and sell onto retail. The XRP is not for retail. It's for institutions to be able to settle large value payments at scale. And we're just kind of lucky enough to know about it before it moves up significantly in price and then has the same thing happen. Like I said, I think it'll trend sideways for an extended period of time, act like almost like a stable coin at a very high value, and will provide, I think it'll end up being designated a tier 1 asset in the banking system, and it'll provide a lot of benefit to those that hold it. So, Linners says, good evening. I asked in Discord, but I would like your opinion. If you don't plan on liquidating any digital assets in the next year, is completing a 1099 DA by December necessary? I have my purchase records handy. If you know your cost basis and you aren't going to move wallets around, then you're probably okay. If you have a significantly higher value right now than you purchased the assets, then it could be advantageous if you do plan to liquidate a portion of it, even if it's not within the next year, to go ahead and fill out that form and get the bump in basis so that when you do sell, you just that much less capital gains that you have to pay, whether that is short-term or long-term. Ben, first time in the chat. You are the go-to. Awesome, brother. Thank you for the kind words. I'm a newcomer to the LLC. Which part of the instructions in the PDF will take me to where I can put the assets in the LLC? It's going to be the capital contributions portion. It walks you through what to write where on the capital contributions page in order to be able to move the assets over. And then you get that notarized and you're good to go. It's a fairly simple process. I've tried to make it as easy as possible for people. But a lot of people want to make it more complicated than it needs to be. And so if you're just going to gift the wallet that the assets sit in into the business with the current value of the assets and get that notarized, and then that serves as written action or consent for the capital contribution. And then that wallet moving forward is owned by the LLC, and so are the assets inside of it. Z-Code, could XLM be the real sleeping giant? I think that XLM will see some price appreciation. I think that you'll see adoption. We've talked to a ton of different people that have incorporated Hyperledger BOSU into their ecosystem for merchant surfaces in peer-to-peer transactions or for anything that's consumer facing. I don't think that XLM will have as large of a price rise as XRP. That's just my personal opinion. I could be wrong. Again, no crystal balls. But I think it's a good investment. I just think the ROI on XRP will be higher. Max says, hey, hit the like button if you haven't already. Appreciate you there, Max. Yeah, second that. If you do like this content, if you think it's valuable, if you're getting something from it, please share it with somebody else. Hit that like button and subscribe. And excited to have you guys here in the chat. Over here on TikTok, we got Powers. He says, with Trump saying he will fire Gary of the SEC, do you think the case will end before January 20th? I think if we saw price appreciation on XRP and you got congressional law that XRP was a bridge asset, so that's stablecoin regs. If Congress passes stablecoin regulation, the way that it's currently drafted and sits, it designates XRP and XLM both as bridge assets, and it would have full clarity as that here in the U.S. No, in and of itself, XRP has already been designated by the court as not a security, but the SEC continues to say that it is in certain applications. There's some stuff out on Twitter today where they were trying to block the use of it and say it was a security, even though the law of the land at this point from Judge Torres is XRP is not a security. So, I think that case will eventually wash over and be done with, but I do think it is going to take removing Gary from the SEC. So it could potentially be after January 20th that the case settles, but it could be sooner. Nobody knows. This one's good. Hi, Jake. What is your personal sense of when the market reaches a top? When you get a big move like today was the largest percentage move ever in a single day for BTC. Ever. Like, if you were going to pull out the stops and end it somewhere, that's the time to do it. There's a lot of FOMO. There's a lot of people piling in. There's a ton of people searching Bitcoin. If you look at the Google Analytics, it's through the roof. Those tend to be top indicators. You also see when a lot of people are downloading Coinbase. That's been another statistic that has shown market tops. I don't know that we're there quite yet, but I do think today puts us a lot closer than we have been this entire cycle. Viber says, can we create the arbitrage? You pairing XRP with 20 different coins will create never-ending arbitrage opportunities. XRP is already paired with pretty much every currency on the planet, gold, like everything that you could possibly think of that's going to be around. I'm pretty sure XRP already has a pair with. The liquidity pools and the AMMs, you just one versus the other, XRP versus something else, or two issued assets against one another, and XRP provides liquidity or LP tokens in that circumstance. I think that's where the real money is going to be made, is when you have two issued assets on the XRPL or two other assets that are being arbitraged or traded, and with high volatility and significant upside in both of them. So, like, imagine you had a liquidity pool where you could, put your XRP in there for liquidity between HBAR and XTC. If you thought both of those were two other tokens with significant upside, and there was going to be volatility between them, and people wanted to arbitrage and trade that market, I think that that'll be one of the strategies that the DWP may look to use in the future. Angus points out something good. Happy Veterans Day. Thank you to everybody that served our country. I don't say it enough. I've got uncles and other people in my life that I thank today for their service in our country and all that they've done. So if you're here on the chat, if you are military in any capacity, thank you for your service. You are appreciated, and we wouldn't be free without you guys. So, you here on TikTok also, thank you if you have served the U.S. in any capacity. Marco J 20022, not ISO 2022, but Marco J. Wouldn't Ripple just wait until their stablecoin goes live before XRP take off? Why would Ripple allow Tether to capitalize off of ramping XRP? ROUSD is going to go live here in the short term, and I think you're going to see a ton of other stablecoins go live on the XRPL as soon as we do get legal clarity, or you see the price appreciation happen for the asset to be able to settle the back into the stock market or SWIFT or CBDCs. I think CBDCs are going to be way bigger than people realize. We now have digital identity directly on the XRPL. You've got oracles that are native to the network. Everything's in place for institutional adoption of the XRPL at this point. And I do think that ROUSD is going to play a role in that. But like I said, I think CBDC is issued by Japan, the digital pound, the digital yuan, digital ruble. I think that every G7 nation will likely utilize the XRPL to issue their CBDC, including the US if we issue one. If we don't, then there's a possibility they could roll Tether into the US government, which I don't know that they haven't already, to cause what's about to happen. But I'm with you. I get what you're saying. I don't think they'll ever issue Tether. Well, they might issue Tether on the XRPL, but I don't think so. Live in Riches. I like your name. Will ISO tokens go to the moon in March 2025 when ISO is mandatory for banks? ISO is actually not mandatory until November, a year from today in 2025, for everyone. Is the final phase of it. I think you're going to see price appreciation long before that. I think here in 2024, you're going to see some crazy price appreciation. Raf over here says, how long is this bull cycle? They traditionally last somewhere between 30 to 60 days. This is just the beginning of this one. If it's a utility one, I think it's going to last way longer than that. I think market dynamics change completely if we see utility of these assets, and instead of the cyclical nature that we've seen in the past. But if constraints don't change, January, it's lights out, it's done. Like I said, but if we get utility, then it could last the next decade. Let's see here. SAE says thoughts on launch of ROUSD and if it will have any effect on XRP's price, and also thoughts on Velo actually being used for BRICS. Velo is consumer facing. It's not going to be anything that BRICS or international powers use. I think it's a great tool. I think that retail and their ability to trade stocks through Velo or other tokenized securities, definitely something to look at there, but it's not going to be. I saw what you're asking about, where Putin talked about tokenized markets on blockchain today. I'm very confident that that's not Velo, that it's Corda instead. And I do think that stablecoins, RLUSD, and other CBDCs issued on the XRP will have huge implications for liquidity moving into XRP itself and price appreciation. Let's see here. Ryan, hope you're well. Thank you for all that you do. Appreciate you for being here, brother, and the kind words. Could you please give me your thoughts on Flare, use case, price prediction, and anything else that comes to mind? I was around for the snapshot in 2020, December 12th of 2020. I think that there's something to do with that. I don't know what yet, but I think that that's important because the lawsuit happened, 11 days later on the 21st. 9 days later on the 21st. So there's something there. There's something weird about that to me. I do think that Flare is important, especially the FTSO or the Flare Time Series Oracle. I know that was the main initiative of Flare. And again, what I talked about earlier, I think there's going to be a lot less arbitrage in markets when you're providing like good prices across all the exchanges, and the price fees are the same through the oracles, and there's not huge discrepancies between the price on one exchange versus another one. The FTSO incentivizes people, pays them rewards for providing good data. And so I think that that's a great use case for Flare. Flare Finance and all the different things that they have is a separate company other than Hugo and what he does. F assets and all those things still they're in beta. They're kind of yet to be seen what that's going to look like. I do think that there's a use case there. I'm hesitant to put my XRP or wrap it on that network as FXRP. And the reason being for that is you have to put up 2.5 times the collateral at Spark. And if somebody decides to take the XRP, you're stuck with the Spark. I don't know if I'm willing to give up, if there's no counterparty risk, if I'm putting up both sides of that transaction and minting the FXRP, then cool. I'm good with that. But if I'm dealing with the counterparty that could run off with my asset and just leave me with the Spark, I'm not into that game. So I think it's a great project. I think that there will be use case. No idea on price appreciation. I do think it'll be significantly higher than a penny or wherever it is today. I sold, and just transparently, I sold all mine at 29 cents on the way down when they finally launched the token. So I haven't been participating or earning rewards or any of that. I know a lot of people have. Again, I think it's a great network and that there's going to be use case, and especially banks. I think banks were probably the largest holders of Flare after the snapshot was taken and the distributions happened. It could be what banks use as DeFi in the future in order to compete with what's been built out on Ethereum. So see what happens. Hey, there's a bunch of memberships. Thank you, Kevin, for the memberships for people this evening. We've got David. He says, in your opinion, why would R3 be up for sale if there's such a big upside for them? As I've worked with people in higher level business, sometimes you separate things out. You might use your nonprofit to develop a certain type of IP and see if it's going to be viable before you sell it to one of your for-profit businesses to use it. You might set up, make an investment in a specific company for a certain application, and after it gets viable and gets market value and traction, then you might acquire it back and then roll it into what you've already built. It's kind of like a layer of separation or arm's length until it makes the most sense to actually roll it into your stuff. So all the large banks are who originally invested in R3, and that's BNY Mellon, Goldman City, Bank of America, JP Morgan. Like, you can go look at Crunchbase and find it and see all the people that invested. And they did one round beyond that. I think one of their hedge fund got in. We've looked at trying to acquire stock for R3 and haven't been able to find any. There may be some employees that are looking to sell some stock. I think there could be some significant upside on that. But whoever acquires R3, I think, maybe it's Ripple, maybe it's BlackRock, maybe there's a lot of large enterprises that would benefit from acquiring R3. It could be MasterCard or Visa. I made a video on this not too long ago as a little short. So big deal. I do think that whoever ends up buying them, if somebody does, are going to make out like a bandit. Let's see here. We've got Anthony. He says, I'm 60 years old and disabled. I'm sorry to hear that, brother. I'm glad you're here and taking the time for a question. He says, what tax break do you think I would qualify for? Thank you for all your hard work and what you put in. I appreciate it. You might look at SSI. If you're disabled, I mean, you depends on how you're disabled and what you're disabled for. You can get some payment that way from the government. I'm all for social programs if there's actual need for them. I think people get down on their luck and have bad things happen to them and they need a hand occasionally. And I would like it if our tax dollars were actually used in that capacity and there wasn't other things done with them and there weren't people abusing it. It doesn't sound like you're trying to abuse it. So that's what I would look at. I would look for disability and to what level you're disabled. If you're a veteran, you go to the VA and have a conversation. I know, again, it's Veterans Day, and I don't want to talk bad about the VA on Veterans Day, but sometimes I wish there were certain things that were better. But hopefully that's helpful for you. Hopefully you have some XRP, and maybe in the future you won't have to worry about any social programs. Might be doing pretty good. Mark says, hey, Jake, given the nature of global trade and time zones across the globe, would it make sense to implement digital assets for utility on a Saturday in the U.S. while Japan, Singapore, etc. are on Sunday? Yeah, I think markets will become global in 24/7, 365. I think the paradigm that Ford created around the 9-to-5 and 5-day work week is going to shift substantially over the next 10 years. I think that'll completely be rewritten. I work all the time, still take weekends and try to make time for my family. I've been bad about that. I've been pretty unbalanced in my life over the last couple of years, and it's taken a toll on some things. But anyway, yeah, I think markets will run 24/7, 365, and maybe there'll be one day that they're shut down. I think you need a break sometimes from things. Maybe it's a 1 hour a day or something else where markets aren't open. But I think that it'll be a big deal. Global commerce the speed and the velocity of money would increase substantially, which would actually drive economic growth. And you would want to reduce the M2 money supply if you did have, a huge uptick in velocity of currency across an economy to keep inflation from running rampant, unless you had real economic value and depreciation coming the other direction from efficiencies being created by technology, which I think AI and blockchain and 3D printing and a lot of this other stuff will do. So if you had an AI that could analyze, all of the transactions across a global economy and incentivize spending or disincentivize spending in certain sectors of the economy, you can kind of have your cake and eat it too with some type of UBI that actually stabilized prices for things. And I think that's where we're headed. We'll see if I'm right or not, but that's my thesis. Man, Liquid Trades is running it up over there on Twitter. Josh asked a question here on TikTok that I get frequently, and so I just want to address it again for maybe people that are new to the channel or haven't ever heard me before. My definition of financially free is you're making twice your monthly expenses in passive income. So let's say your expenses every single month are $10,000, make it $20,000 a month in passive income. Let's say that's a 5% yield. So you need to make about $250,000 a year to make $20,000 a month ish. $240,000. We'll just go ahead and stack another 10 on top of that. So we need about $5 million stuck somewhere making 5% for you in order to be quote unquote financially free under the guise or those qualifications. So I don't know if that's financially free for you. I don't know what your monthly expenses are for your dream life or how you want to live. But that's the way I would work that out. And then whatever you think the price of XRP is going to go to, you would want to buy enough to make sure that you have enough to be able to generate reasonable returns somewhere between 5 and 8% on an annual basis. You can work out the math on that. So he also says in the future, if it does do what it's intended for. Yeah, so liquidity pools and AMMs, I think, will produce those types of returns for people. Somewhere between at least 5 and maybe upwards of 20%, depending on the liquidity pool you're providing things to. So if that's the case, you can kind of, again, work back there on the math on what you need to have double your expenses every single month, and then what you think XRP's price is going to go to. Brett says, how can RLUSD bring more value to the XRPL? Well, we've seen stable coins, right? So you saw USDC, you've seen Tether kind of pump up Bitcoin. Any stable coins are going to allow people to swap fiat for digital assets, and move that value onto a network. And so that's the theme behind it, right? The more value transacting over the XRPL, the higher the value of XRP has to be in order to settle those transactions. And the more stable coins issued on the network, it's likely that there's more and more arbitrage between them, or exchange between them. So that would be why it would bring more value to XRP and the XRPL. Oh man, thank you for the super chat. Jeremy says, thoughts on Link 2 case? What happened to the people who signed up, bought Ripple, Poly, and Link 2 private equity are not accredited? Are they advertised that not accredited could sign up? Well, I don't know. Until there's due diligence and everything shakes out with it, the complaint could be BS, right? Like, it's for wrongful termination, and he brings up a bunch of compliance issues. They could be very valid, right? The marketing practices and some of the other things that were disclosed in the suit don't bode well for Link 2. I think some of them are true, selling things at 150% premium over market value. I can tell you, when they were selling Ripple shares at $50 a piece, we were looking at them for like 20. So that is 150% markup in comparison to what you could buy it for on the normal market. And their algorithm, was pumping things. At least that's what was said in the lawsuit. I don't know that to be true or not, or the complaint. So I don't think it'll be a problem. I think that everybody that has shares on there will be fine. I think that they'll sort through it. Obviously they went through due diligence before they were going to go do the reverse SPAC or an IPO. And so the SEC's looked through their books and things. I know that they've filed all the forms that they need to for the Reg D. It's the non-accredited piece that, again, we do that through the Mastermind. We allow people that are not accredited to participate on the deals. They qualify as sophisticated investors because of the financial education, the business resources we're providing people in the group, along with the pre-existing business relationship. So anyway, we'll see how it shakes out. I think it's going to be okay for the people on the platform. I think kind of worst case scenario is probably they have to pay fines, would be my guess. Appreciate the super chat though. Got another one. Hola, what's up, Alfredo? He says, thank you for all that you do. Look forward to XRP documentary coming soon. Yes, sir. Excited for XRP Unleashed here this next week. And then we're at an hour, so I'm going to take one more over here on TikTok. Brett says, if the new leadership of the SEC drops the case, does Ripple still appeal what they have appealed? I would think they would go ahead and settle for whatever price. I would be surprised if it was less than the 125, but it could be at this point, right? If they did want to settle at a lower amount and just be done with it, and both sides shake hands and walk away, I think Ripple would drop their appeal also. And then Jared, hi Jake, AMMs, if I put 5,000 XRP both sides on an AMM and the price of XRP 10x, would the pool ever balance out again? So to where I get back 5,000 XRP, or is it forever lost? It's forever lost, bud. I hate that, because if you put it on both sides, you're going to be participating in whatever the other asset is. And so 50% of that value isn't going to appreciate like the XRP is. And so that's going to be lost. And that's the impermanent loss or the risk that you have in the AMMs. And another reason we're waiting until the other side of price appreciation to really start to participate in those. We'll go ahead and finish it on this note. Thank you, Honest Aim, for the super chat. He says, Jake, on a major up day value like today, I feel so fortunate to have you and your team working on behalf to guide us and protect our future wealth. Thanks for all that you do. Thank you, brother. Thank you for the kind words. And I hope you and your wife are doing well. Excited to see you guys down in Houston Wednesday this week, and excited for the future. I'm glad that the market's green, and I'm excited that what we've been waiting for is very close at hand here. It's gonna be volatile. There's gonna be people that are very upset, I think. If I'm right about Bitcoin collapsing on itself, a lot of people are going to lose a lot of money in a very short period of time, and a lot of people are going to make a lot of money in a very short period of time. And it's a zero-sum game, and I really don't enjoy those. I like when everybody involved is aligned and makes money together, but unfortunately, markets tend to be a zero-sum game. So anyway, with that, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. If you do want to go check out the Mastermind, participate there. We do have a free month if you want to go check out Carbon One. So it's mastermind.beyondbroke.com. Up here, you can look at it there. It's beyondbroke.com. You can put in the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, just like it's spelled there. 1, the number 1, and then MO for month. And you get a free month in Carbon One when you sign up, and you can get all of the benefits that entails. Financial education, business resources, the events, all the town halls and all the business resources there, and on all the other channels in the community there in the Discord, along with being able to participate on the private deals that we run in the group. So I hope you'll have a wonderful week. Happy Monday. We'll be back Wednesday as we do every single week. Well, actually, take it back. We won't be back Wednesday this week. I'm wrong, because I will be down in Houston at the premiere for XRP Unleashed. So maybe when I get back Thursday, maybe we'll run it up Thursday night with you guys. But until then, I hope you'll have a wonderful week, and we will see y'all on the next one.